Senator Lambie is also sharpening her attack on union boss John Setka, urging him to resign and using her crossbench power to do that. Joining us for discussion on this and more is Tasmanian Senator Eric Abetz. Eric, thank you for your time.
A pleasure.
What do you make of, let's start with what Jacqui Lambie is asking for with John Setka. It's quite a strong demand. She says she's not backing down. She's not going to support these union-busting measures unless Setka goes.
Well, they aren't union-busting measures, and that is something that I would put to you and your viewers. This is about ensuring that there is a robust regime to ensure that the sort of standards that we expect of our corporate officials also apply to union officials. And so what I would say to Senator Lambie is, should John Setka resign? Absolutely. Anthony Albanese is of that view as well. The difficulty is he can't get him to resign. But that said, Bob Hawke deregistered the BLF. What happened? The CFMEU grew up in its place. If you get rid of John Setka, somebody else will replace him with the same sort of culture. And we need a cultural change, and the only way you achieve that is not by a one-off deregistration or a one-off resignation, but by putting in a framework that ensures that the culture changes. And that is why I would suggest to Senator Lambie she look very carefully at the history in this area, and one resignation by John Setka will not clean up the CFMEU. What it will need is a cultural change to be put upon the trade union movement. It's only a small element that will be impacted with a change in the legislation.
Sorry, can we just unpack that a bit when you say it's not a union-busting measure? This is further criminal sanctions that would be applied to union officials, would it not?
That's right. And so what it is not union busting, but criminal busting within unions to ensure that the standard of leadership within the trade union movement mirrors that we expect in the corporate sector.
So you can see how unions would feel like they were under attack from that, though?
Oh, well, they shouldn't, because any trade union official that abides by the law and is a responsible trade union leader, and I would say that's about 98% of them, or if not more, should feel absolutely comfortable with this legislation. But those that seek to do the wrong thing should be feeling very uncomfortable, and that is why people like Sally McManus, who publicly advocate the breaching of laws, the breaking of laws to achieve outcomes, which is unacceptable in civil society that is based on democracy and rule of law, those sort of officials feel as though this might require them to behave in a manner they don't want to. But for the average Australian, abiding by the law is not something that is too much to ask of them, and I think most Australians support these measures.
Now, when it comes to Jacqui Lambie's success as a crossbench senator so far, she secured the agreement that the social housing debt for Tasmania will be wiped, over $150 million. You were against this, even though you are from Tasmania, because you thought it was going to set a bad precedent for other states. Clearly, the government doesn't agree.
Oh, well, what was being proposed at first was simply a waiver of the debt. And my own view was that that was bad policy. What I said was, if you waive the debt, then there should be conditions attached to it. So the history from South Australia under the Gillard government was they forgave the debt in a contra deal on Gonski, only to find that the then South Australian Labor government spent even less on social housing. So if you're going to forgive the debt, you've got to lock in an absolute guarantee that the money saved on capital and interest will in fact be spent on social housing, and that guarantee has been obtained from the Tasmanian government along with planning reform. So those two fundamental elements were a requirement of the forgiving of the debt, and that is why I support the decision.
Matthias Cormann, Finance Minister, has said that every other state's welcome to come and try and make the same deal with the federal government. Isn't that indicative that this has been exactly what you said, that it could be a floodgate for all the other states to be coming forward wiping their debt?
Well, if it would have just been the wiping of the debt, then yes. But we've got some fundamental significant reforms in Tasmania to ensure that any cent saved will now be added onto social housing expenditure, and also fundamental reform in the planning area, which is ultimately the issue that drives house pricing. And if the planning at the local level isn't there to allow housing to be built quickly and affordably, we will continue to have these problems. So those two fundamental reform elements that are part of the package is what was, if you like, put into the mix as a result of some people saying that just the forgiveness of the debt by itself will not put one extra roof over one extra head in Tasmania. But what we did was get this agreement, as a result of which we can now be satisfied that there will be extra roofs over extra heads, and as a result relieve the housing problem.
Now, in the winter break, we had a pretty significant development from the government on religious freedoms debate and the proposal for these religious discrimination protections. There's been some dissatisfaction within religious communities that they're not going far enough. What's your take on what's been proposed?
Look, all I'm willing to say at the moment is that the Attorney-General has conducted himself and the consultation process in a manner that is exemplary, and whilst those discussions are taking place, I don't think it's appropriate to say I want this wing nut tightened or this wing nut loosened in relation to the legislation, because the discussions are taking place in good faith, and it stands to reason that not everybody's going to be absolutely satisfied with what comes out at the end of the day. But the process the attorney has gone through, I think, is exemplary, is very good, and he's listening, continuing to listen, and we'll find out what ultimately comes before the Parliament.
I guess from your perspective, though, from what you've just said, it is fair to say you do think there are some things that need to be tinkered with?
Look, every piece of legislation will... any parliamentarian that is into the detail of legislation will always see something that can be improved.
And there's something you think of religious freedoms.
But that said, not all wisdom resides between my two ears, and as a result you've got to give to others as well and come to a compromise, and that is where I think the Attorney-General is doing an exceptionally good job, and I'm awaiting the final outcome, but thus far absolutely satisfied with the process.
But you don't think there's that unity on what's been proposed yet within the coalition?
Look, is there a wish list? Yes, of course there is, and I'm sure every individual MP would have their wish list in relation to this legislation, but we have to come to a consensus on it. So I don't want to say that this particular issue is absolutely fundamental to me, because if we all did that, it'd be an absolute mess. What we're doing is working together with each other to ensure that we come to the best possible landing, keeping in mind that freedom of religion is just a subset of freedom of speech, freedom of belief and freedom of association. So very fundamental, that is in the DNA of absolutely every Liberal MP, but we come to it from different perspectives and we'll have to come to a landing. But the fact that we are in this space working to achieve that which the Human Rights Commission itself has identified as a failure in our current legislative framework is, I think, a big tick for the Morrison government and for the attorney in the way that he's handling it.
And just finally, Jacqui Lambie said that she wants MPs to fess up and do a drug test if they expect welfare recipients to do the same. Would you be happy to take a drug test as part of your job?
Look, if that is what it takes to assist those with drug issues to get out of that into a job, then I'm basically prepared to do anything, because to leave these people on society's scrap heap with drugs, with unemployment, is to do them no favours, nor our fellow Australians whose taxes are paying for them to be on welfare and unfortunately on drugs as well. So we will be doing the individual a favour, society a favour and the economy a favour. And if it takes me to have a drug test to get Jacqui Lambie over the line, I'm more than willing to submit.
I'm sure she'll hold you to that. Senator Eric Abetz, thank you for your time.
Thank you.